Hi, and welcome to another edition of TelescopeMan. Today I want to show you how my ham shack has progressed over the last few months. It's now January 2013. I made a few improvements to the station since I did that last video of the station back in the June or July of last summer. So I wanted to bring you up to date on what I've done to the ham shack. So starting from the right hand side of your screen, of course I've got, my little Acer 1 computer connected up to the radio now through a Signal Link USB sound card. And what this lets me do is I can dial up high frequency stations, usually on 20 meters at 14.070. There's usually a lot of people right there, and basically conduct long distance communications using the keyboard. So I guess you could call it text messaging for hams, okay, except it goes across over 20-meter band or other bands, and is basically radio frequency. It has nothing to do with the internet, but it looks like text messaging or a messaging service that you would see on the internet, and the communications are basically instant between you and whoever you're communicating with. Using this little box, which is connected to my ICOM 7000 radio, I can do what's called some of the digital modes in ham radio, digital modes. Just recently I bought this little realistic Radio Shack, very old desktop speaker. It's probably 20 years old, 25 years old, and I bought it at a raffle, paid $10 for it. It's rated 5 out of 5 on eHam. The sound really improved the quality of the sound I could hear coming out of the radio just by substituting this speaker with that Cobra speaker that I was using back a few months ago. I've since moved the Cobra speaker over to the scanner. Works just fine on the scanner, and now I've basically upgraded the audio that I hear using this very old Radio Shack realistic bookshelf speaker, and it's got 2 speakers in it, as you can see. Very good audio quality too. Since then I've bought a 2-meter 70 centimeter radio, this ICOM 880H with D-Star. And D-Star is a mode where you go to a repeater. The one technique is you'll transmit to a repeater. The repeater is connected to the internet, and over the internet it'll go to another repeater and then transmit out of that repeater at some distant site. And I've had many very good conversations with other hams using D-Star on this 2-meter 70 centimeter radio. It also gets analog, so it can be used just like a regular dual band analog radio, but it has this D-Star feature in it. And I've actually talked to a couple of hams in Japan and Scotland and England and various sites across the USA. The audio comes out digital, and the sound quality is probably better than what you would get on an excellent landline telephone. It actually sounds just as good as a landline telephone with absolutely no noise in the background. The only downside of that is you've got to be able to hit the repeater with a good signal, or you will have dropouts, and it makes you sound like R2-D2 when it drops out. It's sort of like a digital TV. You either get a great signal or no signal Well, the same thing with D-Star. You either get a great signal or no signal. Whereas with analog, you might be able to pull the signal out of the background noise if you listen real carefully. But on D-Star, it just simply drops out. So if you got a good D-Star repeater, kind of fairly near you, fairly near being 20 miles or so, got a good antenna, D-Star is what I think is a great new mode for ham radio operators. Been around about 10 years, but it seems like it's really caught on in the last couple of years, and it's even starting to be used by some of our emergency services teams, because you can set up direct D-Star communications. You can do it on analog also, but it's a little bit easier with D-Star, to be truthful. You can set up file transfers, internet or email using RF and D-Star, and which makes it kind of ideal for emergency communications. You can transfer files or forms or messages, and you can even link, if the repeaters are still up, you can take and link certain repeaters and basically broadcast over a much wider area. So if you're in the market to buy a dual band radio, I would recommend to you that you get one that's D-Star capable, and just step out there and get one. That way you will be able to talk on that mode. A couple of the other changes were, as you can see, I've moved some of these speakers around since the last time. I moved I got a little bitty, another Radio Shack bookshelf speaker that I've got plugged into my D-Star radio. I have been thinking about connecting it up some way with this speaker, but I'm kind of afraid of getting a ground loop if I do that. I'm going to have to talk about it with some folks that know a little more than me to see if that's going to cause some kind of ground loop on connect two radios to the same speaker. So I haven't done that yet, but I might in the future, and then just eliminate this little one and go strictly with the better sounding realistic speaker. Kind of moved my dual band 2 meter 70 centimeter little calibration SWR calibration deal back in the back there. I can still see it when I'm setting right here and tell if the antenna, the dual band, is actually working or not. Kind of saved me recently. I had some of the cable between the ham shack and the antenna go out, and all of a sudden I started getting a very high SWR on that meter, and I knew something was wrong, so I stopped transmitting. If you don't know, that doing that over a long period of time can affect the finals transistors in the radio and can burn them out. So it's kind of a good practice to have some SWR meters connected up to your antennas so you can make sure that the SWR is proper. Still have the MFJ 986 antenna tuner here. It works great. It's been working great, easy to tune. Took me several weeks to kind of get down the tuning, the way you have to tune the antenna, but now it's only takes me a very few short seconds to tune it up when I change transmission bands. And boy, I can highly recommend this if you can find one used, MFJ 986. And what I really like about it, and what my Elmer told me I would like eventually, is that it only has 2 knobs to tune. Some of them have 3, which makes it a little more complicated. This one only has 2 knobs that are used for tuning, so it makes it real easy to tune. I never did hook back up the light on the meter. I don't know if I mentioned this in my last video. I had a strange RF problem in the shack. Every time I would transmit on 40 meters, my computer would go crazy. All the USB ports would disconnect. You know, the radio would shut off, swap wires, and did all kinds of things, and decided to unplug the light, which is plugged in to the power strip in the rear there. And the moment I unplugged this light, I had no more problems. So somehow it was creating a ground loop or something, the wiring to this light and to that power strip behind here was creating it. I could probably solve that problem by putting some those ferrite magnets, you know, all around the cable. But I said, you know, who cares? I'm not going to worry about it. I can see the meter perfectly okay in this room that's already lighted from above, so really not a problem. I never plugged it back in. My pyramid power supply is just ticking along. You know, this was a special power supply that was rebuilt by an old ham in Arlington, Texas, and that's all he does. He rebuilds power supplies. And he rebuilt this one, and it has been running perfectly. He removed some of the circuits like this voltage adjustment. He takes that out, puts his own board in there, and then it only gives you 13.8 volts, period, which is just like a battery. He rewired it, did some other things to it, but it's been working perfectly all this time, never one instance of any problems. I also went out and bought a Jetstream power supply just to power the little dual band ICOM 880H here. And so this power supply is simply supplying power for this radio separately from this radio, which is on this power supply. The only other upgrades I'm going to do to the station, I've ordered in some 3/4 inch copper braid, and I'm going to switch out the ground wire, the main ground wire that goes between the antenna tuner and the ground rod that's outside this window here. And I'm going to change that from wire over to braid, which is supposed to give you a lot better ground. So as soon as that comes in, I'm going to upgrade that ground that's going from the antenna out to the ground rod. And that should finish this station off, and I'm real happy with it. It's January 2013, and I've now made over 200 RF contacts. All over the place. My furthest contacts have been into Russia and in New Zealand. So basically hitting both sides of the planet. And if you remember, I'm doing that with a end-fed piece of wire that's over the top of a tree in the backyard. That's my antenna for HF. It's really worked well. It's called a QSO King. A QSO King. I originally bought the 88-foot version, but after I got it up a few months, I went on and bought some more wire and extended it out to the 120-foot version. So I basically have 120 feet of long wire, end-fed long wire, out in the backyard. And that's what I'm using to make my HF contacts with. It tunes up, this tuner tunes up, it even tuned 80 meters on that long fed. Really easily tuned it with not much movement over the 40 meter band, not much movement of the dials. I can reach from 80 on down all the way through 70 centimeter using that long wire and a brand new dual band antenna, which is outside. I upgraded the antenna outside for my repeater use on 2 meter and 70 centimeter, and I put up a Comet GP9. It's a 17-foot vertical, and the moment I put that thing up, I could hit repeaters, out to about 55 to 60 miles. So I'm real happy with that Comet GP9 vertical that's outside now, so I'm going to try to stick with that. I have upgraded all the coax going to that antenna with what's called LMR 400 because I had 213 coax on it and I lost half of my signal strength when I was using that. So I've gone back to LMR 400 for the VHF, UHF frequencies off of that antenna and got back all my signal strength. So that's where the station is today. And what's for the future? I'm going to continue to work casual DX. I kind of like some of the digital modes, PSK 31. I get a kick out of. I run that a lot using the computer and the signal link. Made a lot of contacts that way. I think the only thing now is I need to make a decision on either to upgrade my antennas, which I'm real hesitant to put up towers and that kind of thing because there's no way I'm going to be able to climb a tower, and I really don't want to pay for a crank-up style. They're just too expensive for an old guy that's retired to buy, unless I find one, you know, dirt cheap that somebody wants to give me. So I had thought about putting up a tower, but probably not going to happen. The other thing I've been thinking about is to buy a small amplifier, something around 500 or 600 watts, to give me a little boost on HF to help me get through some of the noise interference QRM that sometimes occurs on that band, on those bands. So I'll let you know with the next video if I step out there and buy an amplifier and probably put it somewhere on this desk, maybe over here, and rearrange some of this other stuff. So with that said, I wish you clear skies as always. 73 to everybody, and remember, keep looking up to see the greatest show on earth right over your head every single night. See y'all later and hear y'all on the radio.